losing 3 in a row. We go to back to Boston. We're up 3-0 in the first period. And again, I'm not saying I saw things through a different lens or I'm better than it, but I remember when we scored 3-0, the celebration on the bench was of almost, hey, all right, boys, we got this. It's 3-0. And I remember saying to myself, like, we don't have this. Like, there's a long game left, and we lost. We literally collapsed. The Flyers did an unbelievable job of continuing to put pressure on. They never gave up. They came back and ended up beating us in Game 7. It was one of the more crushing defeats that I've ever had as a professional athlete. But you fast forward to the next year, we had heard about it all summer, right? You couldn't get away from it. Even if you lived in Canada, like, it's the greatest collapse in the history of the NHL playoffs. Only the third team to do it. I can't remember when the team before us was. Didn't matter. But we used that as fire to go into the next one. And we had 3 Game 7s, I think, in that playoff run to win the cup. And it really taught us, like, you play until the final whistle. And again, if you're down by a couple goals, that confidence that you're talking about, like, that's all right, boys. We're down 2. That's fine. We got 50 minutes left. It's lots of time. Like, let's just figure out a way to make it happen. So that lesson was huge for our team going into the next season. And I don't think, I shouldn't say I don't think we win 2011 without it, but it definitely helped win in 2011 going through 2010.
That was 2-time Stanley Cup champion Shawn Thornton, and you are listening to the Up My Hockey podcast with Jason Podolin.
Just watch me now.
Welcome to Up My Hockey with Jason Podolin, where we deconstruct the NHL journey, discuss what it takes to make it, and have a few laughs along the way. I'm your host, Jason Podolin, a 31st overall draft pick who played 41 NHL games, but thought he was destined for 1,000. Learn from my story and those of my guests. This is a hockey podcast about reaching your potential.
Hello there, and welcome back to the Up My Hockey podcast with Jason Podolin. I am your host, Jason Podolin. And today we have on a former teammate of mine in the St. John's era with the St. John's Leafs, who went on to become a 2-time Stanley Cup champion and one of the most beloved Boston Bruins of all time, Shawn Thornton. Now, Thordy is revered as being a great teammate, and I will vouch for that. Thordy and I got along real well back in St. John's, maybe a little too well some nights, and had a lot of fun together. He would go to bat for you, definitely. He played hard on and off the ice, and he was just a ton of fun to be around. Always a quick wit, always somebody that would be there for you when the chips were down, and you could always count on Thordy in whatever aspect you were speaking about, whether that be find someone to go for dinner after a game or a beer, or someone who's going to back you up on the ice. Shawn was your guy. And his story, I'm really happy that he agreed to come on. He's very busy these days with the Florida Panthers in the marketing division. He's working hockey from the other side of the boards, and he's doing a great job at it by all accounts. He was a curious player towards the end of his career, which we talk about. He was always interested in the business side, and making connections and networking and becoming resourceful and gaining information benefited him and is benefiting him now. So for Shawn to take some time out of his day to share stories with us, I am super grateful for. And yeah, he's just one of the great stories that I wanted to have a chance to talk with him. And the funny thing is, like I said, Thordy and I were, we were friends beyond teammates. We chose to go to Florida together for one of the All-Star breaks, which I remember. We had a ton of fun doing that on the plane. We were listening to Miami, the song by Will Smith, all the way down to Miami, and anyways, we had a ton of fun together. But we haven't been in touch since our playing days. I went over to Europe. Shawn obviously went on to an NHL career, and hadn't talked to him in over 10 years. And that's the hockey world, and that's what the connections will do. Because when you pick up a message on LinkedIn, it works out. So he wanted to come on. I wanted to talk to him about his book. He has a book out right now, fighting my way to the top. which I picked up a signed copy of here in the Vernon bookstore. I couldn't believe they had a signed copy of Shawn's book there, but they did, and read that. It's a good read, and I want to talk with Shawn because of his, like, what he was, as a player, and then what he developed himself into as a player, and what it took for him to do that. You talk about a story of perseverance and resiliency and growth, and like Shawn's your guy. I mean, Thordy's your guy. He got his first taste of the NHL at 25, which is a heck of a long time in some people's minds. To be 4, 5, 6 years, I think he was in the minors, 6 full seasons before he got his taste with an NHL jersey. Like, that's a long grind, and a lot of guys aren't willing to make that grind. So he got his first game at 25, but he didn't become an NHL regular till he was 29 years old. He was at the end of his, I think it was his second or third pro contract. He got traded from the Chicago organization, where he was with Norfolk at the time, to Anaheim. And he went on to be an everyday player for the Ducks, and went on to be a regular in the lineup for the playoff run that won them the Stanley Cup in 2007. Which happened to be a contract year for Shawn. So it was an awesome departure from being labeled by many as a career minor leaguer into the world of free agency, and everybody wanted somebody like Shawn on their team. So he had quite a few offers. He ended up choosing the Boston Bruins on a multi-year deal, and ended up being a part of the culture change that happened there during that time, which led to a Stanley Cup a few years later with them. And him being an iconic figure in Boston now. He was really, loved by the fans. He played the game the way Boston fans think the game should be played. He was never the biggest guy in the fight, or very, very rarely, but he always showed up and he always got it done. He was a technical guy, knew how to fight, the art of fighting. And he was also a heck of a player, which we talk about here. A very underrated player, in my opinion. I noticed his skill set when we played together on the Rock. He had some hands, and he could play, and he could think the game. And he turned out to be, a very, very steady third, fourth line player in the NHL for a lot of years. Ended up playing, how many games did he end up playing? Over 700 games, regular season games, and over 100 NHL playoff games. And that's starting essentially from the age of 29. It's a fantastic, fantastic story, and it just lets you know that from the steel mill where he was working when he first got drafted, and even his draft story is remarkable. That big dreams can come true, and if you play the game the right way, you keep your head down. And keep your nose to the grindstone, that these things can work out. And I'm so thankful for Shawn for sharing the story. And he's always got a good story. He's a funny guy to talk to. I know you're going to enjoy this conversation. So without further ado, I bring you Shawn Thornton. All right, we are live. This is episode 78. I got an old teammate of mine, Shawn Thornton, in front of me. It's been way too long since we had a chance to catch up, but I want to welcome to the podcast two-time Stanley Cup champion, Shawn Thornton.
Never thought we'd be saying that when we were in the Rock. That's for sure. Good to see you, buddy. It's been too long. You are correct.
It has been too long, man. And you know what? Like I as many, I'm sure, that have followed your career. And had a touch point along the way, and maybe every place up until Anaheim probably would have said what you just said, right? Like, just the unlikely hero, but at the end of it, like, totally believable, in so many ways, and so well earned. So, first of all, congrats on that. And it's been a long time for me to be able to say that, but like, what an amazing run, what an amazing career. And I'm sure you have a million stories along the way, which is why the book is here. But yeah, congrats, my friend.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks. Yeah, it was a grind. 9 years in the minors is not a walk in the park, as you're aware. But it all paid off. I wouldn't change a thing. Maybe I would have liked to have gotten to the show a little bit quicker, but I wouldn't change how it ended up.
No kidding, man. And like did some digging. In your book, you talk about, hockeyfights.com not existing. Hockey DB didn't exist. Like, we didn't know shit about each other, really, right? Like, playing together. We had a few stories here and there, but no one really knew. And now I can go back and dig in. And, geez, man, like 5th all time in the AHL for PIMS, which I'm sure you're aware of.
You passed me? I was 3rd when I left. I guess a couple other journeymen must have passed me.
Oh, there you go. Okay, so you were top 3 at one point. Bonvie looks like he's never going to be touched. But, even to be 5th, I was like, because you were throwing up big numbers for PIMS there, right? And I'm like, I wonder where he's at. So I searched it up, and I'm like, 5th. Like, that's crazy in and of itself. Like, is that something that you're proud of in a weird way?
Listen, you were there for it, right? Like, it was a means to an end. Some days I enjoyed it back then. As I got older, it was less enjoyable, but I'm not going to complain about it. It got my foot in the door. It's what I wasn't the greatest hockey player. I had to work hard on that. So it got me noticed, got me into the A, kept me in the AHL instead of going down to the East Coast League. And, like we talked about, work, and eventually, turn myself into an okay hockey player and then take the next step. So am I proud of it? Listen, it's a stat, right? I feel like I earned it. We had some great teams back then when I was putting up big numbers in the PIM category, but that league was a different league back then, right? We play St. John, Freddie. They had 5 or 6 guys on every team. Every night you thought you were getting in 1 or 2, and to get out of one without a fight was a miracle back then. So it's not surprising, especially with my role and me trying to make a statement for myself and make a name for myself. But it's a badge of honor. I'm not sure I'm proud of it, but it's definitely a badge of honor. I doubt it's getting me in the AHL Hall of Fame, but it's a badge of honor, I guess.
Well, I think it was hard. You mentioned it a few times in your book, and by the way, I haven't been able to get through it. I just got it yesterday. I wanted to get into it as much as I could.
Yeah, it's
but you do get into it, and you talk about. Maybe you didn't use the word pride, but it's not easy. Like, let's just put it that way, right? It's not easy to do what you did with the size of the guys that you were up against. In the minors for a majority of it, not knowing. It got you in the league and it maybe kept you there, but you didn't know what it was going to get you, what it wasn't going to get you. It's a mind game, I'm sure, a lot of the time, and that would be something that I think would be proud of, because there's got to be days you don't want to do it.
Right. But I guess I'm fortunate in my upbringing that, talk about it a little bit in the book too. Like, you met my old man. It's very blue collar, didn't want to go back to the factory, fighting in the AHL, us going on the road to Portland and being able to have a few beers with the guys. Like, that's a much better option for me than going back home and having to do the 7 to 4 in the factory. So it wasn't the toughest job in the job of hockey, probably, but still better than a lot of other options out there. So I never complained about it. I don't think it anyways.
The one thing I heard an interview with you on, it was on the Hockey Network there on Sirius, and I can't remember who you were with. Maybe with the guy O'Brien, I think, maybe maybe you, and you actually said, which surprised him, he got on afterwards saying you mentioned that you didn't really like it, and maybe you were talking more about later parts of your year or in your career. But yeah, and he said, like, the Shawn Thornton he knew, he thought you loved it, and the Shawn Thornton I knew, I thought you loved it too. So was that kind of a little bit of a mirage you were putting up there, as far as like from how you presented yourself?
Yeah, I didn't want any of my teammates thinking I was going into a game having second thoughts about the job that I was being entrusted to do. So yeah, listen, Obes could do it too, right? Like, you could fight. We had some guys that could take care of themselves, but I had other teammates that maybe that wasn't their strong suit, to say the least. And the last thing I wanted was them sitting beside me thinking, oh God, he hates doing this. Is he going to be there for me tonight? Like, so yeah, I put on a show a little bit. I acted a little crazier than I was. You know me off the ice too, and my personality off the ice is completely different than when it was on the ice. And I had to put my mind in that space to be able to do the job that I did. But so was I acting a little bit? Yeah, probably. I'd be hard pressed to find too many guys that really enjoyed getting punched in the face and having their orbital broken and nose bleeding all over the place. You really, that's a special breed to be like that.
Yeah, no kidding. I want to rewind just a little bit, because I know you're a humble dude, and you still remain that way. It seems from the book and how you talk. But you kind of beat yourself up as a hockey player. And that was one thing that, like, when anybody ever asked me like about you, the one thing I remembered is I thought you were better than people gave you credit for, you know, like and I mean that heartfelt. Like, I was like, this guy can play, you know, like you could play. Like, I don't know what you would say. I thought that, like, your skating, I think you needed to work on a bit, but your hands were always there. I thought you had a touch with the puck, and that's something that I think gets lost. And I think for me, like, watching your success, and then as you made it as an NHLer, yeah, I mean, the fighting got you through the door, but you could play the game, and which is why I think, like, that Bruins line was so successful, and you being a part of it, because you weren't like the typical, you know, I don't know, whoever, insert the blank, right? The guy that would play a minute and a half and just fight and couldn't play a lick, you know?
I wouldn't be able to do that. I don't think I wouldn't be able to look myself in the mirror. I mean, again, to earn a paycheck, to not be back in the factory, yes, but I wouldn't have been happy. I would have been less happy doing that. Just literally going out there. I think I might even play D when we played together, didn't I? Yeah. So, I mean, the NHL obviously was move up front, you're forward, and my skating, I'd say, still would have needed improving it. I could get there in a straight line, but when it started going this way, it wasn't as good, especially if there's a puck on my stick. But I appreciate it. I mean, I thought my hands were always decent. I mean, you get into shootouts and practice and stuff, I can do things that people weren't expecting me to do. And my teammates always thought I was, underappreciated in my playing ability, but I see the guys that I'm playing with, and I'm like, well, I can never do that. So I just tried to get by and not be. I think I was smart enough to not expose myself, I suppose.
That's funny. Yeah, I mean, it was fun actually reading a few chapters there, because you spent some time talking about The Rock, and, you know, almost dedicated an entire chapter to Bird Dog. Rest in peace, Bird. You know, what a crazy time. I mean, I've had discussions with Terry Ryan, who you mentioned him briefly in the book too. Played in Fredericton there, was first rounder with Montreal. He was a tough guy in his own right, good hockey player, and he was part of those battles against us. He was also part of playing for Michel Therrien, which I think we should probably touch on here at some point. But I mean, with Bird, and I'm going to connect Bird just to you, and you saying that you act a little crazy, because I was with you. I mean, we were both young, right? I mean, I was 1 year older than you, so I was in my second year pro when you were your first year pro, and we were both kind of trying to figure it out. And you definitely did, like, you were a little bit of a showman, right? And a little bit of a guy who wanted other people to know that you were around there. And then you also talked about Bird being a bit of a mentor and kind of reminding you that you needed to be a little bit crazy sometimes. Was that something what part of the piece of being under Bird's wing that you kind of took to heart?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you have a beer with that guy. He was 100% the craziest person I've ever played with in my career, right? Like, he had a switch that when he went, it was gone. It was like he went into a dark hole and you don't know who was coming out of it. And, but again, I talk about it in the book, like, and you play with him. If I was in trouble, he would have been the first guy I called, right? Like, he would have flown across the country to bail you out of jail. He was that type of human being. But yeah, I remember he telling me, he's like, Doherty, you're 6'1", 6'2", I think 200 pounds at the time. He's like, all these guys are my size and bigger. Like, you're going to have to act like you're a little bit nuts to just make them think a little bit about coming after you, or you're going to be fighting 36 times a year. And I'm fighting 36 times a year. So maybe I didn't act as crazy as I needed to. And the other thing he said too is, like, don't ever second guess it. Like, you're going in, you go in all guns a-blazing. I remember he always used to use that term, go in all guns a-blazing, gloves off, grab somebody. You'll know real quick whether you're in one or if they're just going to back down. But the majority of the time, you going in with all guns a-blazing, if you don't go in all guns a-blazing, they might not back down. But you go in with all of it, you're going to find out real quick if they're real or not. But you'd rather have that advantage going in. I was like, that's a hell of a point, Bird. Why would I, tiptoe in there, especially in the league we were playing in? So I learned a lot about it. He also, was the guy that was out with the boys, up with the men, and he really helped put that work mentality into myself. I mean, we weren't afraid to have a few back then. Talk about that in the book too. We'd be out, but you better be sure you're the first guy in and on the bike and sweating it out before practice, because you knew he was leading by example in that way. I remember him putting the tracksuit on and the garbage bag to sweat out so he wouldn't stink when he was on the ice. And I mean, I carried that on throughout my career, maybe not going out as late and all that stuff, but I made sure I was the first guy in the gym every single day. Like, when you're the fourth line guy that's getting out of the lineup or just playing some meaningful minutes, like, you better make sure everyone knows you're putting the work in.
Yeah, he was, I agree. Like I think you walked the line with them pretty well in the book, because fortunately for me too, I was one of the guys that he liked. I mean, I don't know why, but I was super thankful that, because you did not want him on your bad side. And there was aspects of Bird that it was so crazy that so many different traits could live inside of one human, because he was really kind and he was like super warm in ways, yet he was a crazy SOB.
And he'd throw an ashtray at you when you're playing his Bells game. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was like, what just happened? And in his head, he's like, I knew where he was going. I wasn't really going to hit him. I was just warning him, don't jump in on my machine at the logger.
Oh my God, that is a funny story. I should actually tell a story. So so they had those VLTs in St. John's, and again, so like I was one of Bird's guys, kind of, right? Like he liked me, and this is more for the audience than for you, Thorts. But like he was, but he had that switch, and he never really knew, like that crazy switch, and you never knew if he was actually putting it on, because sometimes he did put it on, and sometimes it was for real. And he was having a few beers. He was always there at the bar before I was. I think he liked getting there first, and he had a few in him, and it was after a game, and he was playing these VLTs that were there. And that was one of the things that I like to do too after a game, just to unwind, like not talk to anybody and just have a couple of beers and play some VLTs and kind of just get your head in a different spot. And anyways, he's yelling at me from like, what was that? Probably 30 feet. Like it was a long way away. And that was back in the day, you could smoke in the bar, and they had those thick, like glass ashtrays. Like the thing was probably 4 pounds. And he's screaming at me to get off his machine. And I'm laughing at him because I think we're buddies. I'm like, oh, Bird, what? And all of a sudden this thing rips right by my head and breaks into the closet or off the wall or whatever. And I looked at him like, it really could have like ended me, you know what I mean? And it wasn't like he was stone sober, and I have no idea what kind of arm he had, so I don't think he was at pinpoint precision. Like it was just like,
he did, but yeah,
and that was Bird, right? Like you never really knew what you were going to get, and he did some things that you just shouldn't do, you know what I mean? And there was that aspect to him. I don't really want to cover that up because that was part of him too. But boy, like there are some things you could really learn from him, and there's also some things that you could learn not to do from him.
Yeah,
and
100%. I think
2021, like sometimes it was hard to figure out which one, right?
Yeah, Al says in the book, he's like, Bird was a great mentor for him because he taught him what he should do, some aspects, and what he shouldn't do as well. So I love him for both. I mean, you got to make your own decisions as an adult.
How you talk about being the pretty formidable time for you. Like I know for me too. Like I ended up being a suitcase, as you know. Like I was all over the place, different countries and everything, and played with a lot of guys. But my time in St. John's, although probably none of us really wanted to be there, like it was an amazing place to play, and it was an amazing group of people to play with, and even like the group of teammates we had. Even though like we weren't as successful as maybe we thought we should have been, it was a pretty cool group there, Yeah,
we had an amazing bunch of guys. I'm still tight with a lot of them. I mean, for us, you came from sunny Florida to come play for us, right? Like you were here in this. Was this arena built? Was it?
No.
Or you're in the Miami arena. Like you're coming from there and practicing in Pompano to coming to St. John's, Newfoundland, and I'm coming from Oshawa, Ontario, and I know nothing about Newfoundland, nor do I know what Sunrise or Miami is. So we probably had different entry points and different expectations. You were in the NHL. I was coming from junior hockey, and so I embraced it. I really enjoyed it. 4 years there was a lot. My last year with the new coaching staff, I wasn't as happy as I probably would have wanted to been. I needed a fresh start, and I was glad to get out of there. But you got to admit, the people there, like Billy, like all these people we've met when we were there for those, they're just the greatest individuals going. Like they really are. They give you the shirt off their back, open up their doors. We did not go without when we were on the Rock. People were always taking care of us. So I really embraced it. It was the minors, but again, I wasn't ready for the NHL. I didn't know if the NHL was. I thought it was a pipe dream at that point, and it was winter from the time you got there till the time you left. But other than that, I think it was as great of an experience as I would have wanted at that age.
Yeah, no, it was fun. And we were both single at the time. It was a good place to be single. And we were out and getting to know the community and the people and, having our fair share of fun there. I mean, and I talked to Nathan Dempsey. He was a guest on the podcast. And when boy, his career was amazing too. Like after, thinking that you're going to be a or at least me, and I'm sure there was others. I mean, you weren't a captain on any minor league team and you're 26 years old and haven't played a game in the NHL. Like you don't think you're going to have an NHL career at that point. And for him to go on and do that, that's a really great episode for anyone listening, his story. But talking to him, like he was one of the only married guys there.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, like
he was 23 years old. We're like, get out of the game, you old man. We're chirping him like he's 23. But I thought he was 30 in the way he acted, how mature he was, him and Trish being together in high school. I mean, yeah, he's a great human being. I had him in my golf tournament a few years ago. We still keep in touch too. He's such a great human being.
No, what a great guy and what a great success story he had there. But yeah, I mean, I talking with him, I was like, geez, like somebody, and you talk about the book, and I want to talk about that, like the ability to be a professional and what that actually means, and that one discussion Aaron had with you, and you never really got into like what that shifted for you. But at the time, we were there, and personally, I think in both our own ways, we're like really successful. I had 40 goals, was leading the AHL in scoring that one year. I had like 100 pins and penalties, and that was when I got traded. We had a good team that second year where I was there and left, and but we were going out. Like we were out. Again, our example, and our examples were old pros that were going out. You know what I mean? So it was like that was sort of like the culture at the time. We were having personal success, but definitely not like when I hear about like a Sidney Crosby, or I hear about a Patrice Bergeron, or I hear about some of these guys that are at the top of their game. Like we weren't acting like them,
Really not.
Right. But we didn't know any different. You know what I mean? So I was in that talk with Demmer. I'm like, God, like, I don't know if I could have been married. It probably couldn't have been, but maybe it might have been good for me. I mean, but you never know, right? Like, I have no idea.
I'm not sure it's still. Would you still be married though? I mean, I wasn't ready to be. Demmer's a special breed, right? So, but no, you're right. It was a culture back then, and you can't just say it was us. Like we'd go, and the visiting team was in. 75% of the visiting team was in the same bar we were in, like the night before the game and after the game before they flew out. So it was just a different community then, different hockey community then.
Yeah. Well, what was the shift though? You did say, I mean, you're very open, about you liking your bars and going for beers and going in the morning and working it off, and then Erin, your wife there, says, hey, like these things aren't lining up, or they're canceling each other out. What was that? What was that like shift? Of course, there was a little bit of a light bulb moment there, but how did that change how you interacted with the game and maybe your social life?
So I'll tell you a quick story. I haven't told this too many times publicly, but my first date with my wife was like official date. I had met her in the gym. We kept in contact. I went back to the minors. We kept in touch. We weren't really dating, but we were staying friendly. And then our first date, at the end of the season, you always come back. You have probably a week-long bender with your teammates down in the city you're playing, and then you come home. You get to see your boys from back home, and you go on like a 4 or 5 day bender to unwind. I was coming off that 5 days, and I was at my buddy Hubie's place till like I don't even know what time. And I think I might talk about it, but I'm not sure. But anyways, I got up in the morning with not much sleep, probably good enough to drive-ish. Went in to meet her for a workout and worked out. I sweated the whole time. I reeked like Canadian Club probably. Go to lunch. We have lunch. I have one sushi roll and like 6 Sapporos because I'm about to go to another party with my buddies from my hometown, not in Toronto. And so she knew what she was sort of getting into as we started dating. She's like, all right, well, this is the hockey culture. This is what he's like. He likes to have a good time, blah, 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 blah. But then we're about a month in, and we were really dating, and she's like, you're still going out 3-4 days a week. Like, I don't care about it. Like, you have your friends. Like, it's not about time with me or anything like that. But I also see you in the gym for 3 hours a day, if not more. Then I see you go play hockey. Then I see you go back to boxing. And then I go see you do. She's like, you're working out 5-6 hours a day, and you just go and drink it away at night. It's not. It doesn't make sense. You're putting too much effort in. If you're going to be serious about it, like, try and be serious about it. And she wasn't wrong. It was like I've had teammates tell me, I've had coaches tell me, but when somebody that has no clue about the hockey world is just like on the outside, now the inside, but looking at it and gives you that objective opinion, I was like, all right, yeah, she's probably right. I mean, I thought going to Arby's and getting 5 roast beef sandwiches was good eating, right? Like I was like, it's protein, it's fine. I lifted a bunch of weights today. But she really helped like clean up my diet, got me to, start thinking about sleep regular, start thinking about, pick your spots on when you're going to go have a good time. You need that too mentally. Like, I know how you're built, but you don't need to be out 5, 6, 7 days a week. It's not working for you. And you'll never, if you truly want to make it to the next level, you're going to have to be disciplined on both sides of it too. You can't just be, one side serious, the other side not.
Thank you so much for being here today and listening to my interview with Shawn, episode 79. It's pretty insane that we are up this high already in the episode count. I really enjoy this. It's been a lot of fun. I just want to remind you that I do have a parent group called Up My Hockey. If you're a hockey parent listening to this, it's on Facebook. It is a private group. It is not... it's only private just because you can't come in there and spam things, and you can't come and go. So I make sure that it's private. Things can't be shared outside the group. It's a great community. It is a free community. There is tons of value that is offered in there. I share a lot of knowledge from my mindset coaching and things that can help parents navigate the game and players. And it's become a really great resource and a really great community for parents all across North America. There's over 1,500 families in there. So if you have a son or daughter that plays the game in any capacity, really, this is for all hockey parents. This could be a great group for you to join. And if you are a parent of a competitive player, it is the perfect group for you to join, because we do talk about high performance skills and traits. We do help each other along. It's not just me being the voice of this group, but there is other members that are very vocal, and it is a very highly engaged group. So if you are interested, please join the Up My Hockey Facebook group. Join the other over 1,500 families involved, and you are also the first to receive any of my new offers or new products while you're in there as well. So Up My Hockey on Facebook. It's called the Up My Hockey Parent Group. Register today. Now back to the episode with Shawn Thornton.
Right. So having someone in your corner like that who is home, and I don't know if you guys are living together at that point, but then it kind of kept you more accountable to it though too, right?
Yeah. We weren't living together. We were just dating, and I was still in and out of the city, back and forth to my hometown. But we really got serious over that summer, and then I went into training camp. She changed my diet. I went into training camp in Chicago. I think it was about 198 pounds, which was lighter than my rookie year. I was shredded. But then she came to watch me play, and she was actually sitting beside Nathan Dempsey's wife. We were playing Edmonton, and I had to go with Big George's, and he tossed me all over the place. She had no idea really what NHL was. She grew up jumping horses. Her dad was the director of the National Ballet of Canada, not a hockey family at all.
Right.
But George tossed me all over the place. She's like, oh, he's in good shape. But yeah, he probably needed that extra 5, 8, 10 pounds for what his job is. I remember Trish grabbed her. It was, again, her first hockey game watching me play. Trish grabbed her by the knee and was like, hey, if he goes to the locker room, they'll call you. If he goes to the penalty box, he's okay. She's like, what did I sign up for? But no, she really helped put me, my mind in the right place in that capacity anyways, discipline-wise.
That's, yeah, man. The guys you end up fighting, crazy. And I mean, that's everyone that's kind of comments in the book, and obviously nothing away from your personal toughness, because you won a lot of them, but just how well you did at the size you were, even when we played together. You mean it was that was just the story of your career, really, right?
Yeah, it was a science to me. I was always thinking about it. Hockey fights and all that stuff when it came out actually helped me, because I could see what their tendencies were. It wasn't asking the assistant coach, hey, had you ever seen this guy before? And he tells you that he's left-handed when really he's right-handed, or some stupid, or your teammates that might have seen him in junior and just say, yeah, he's a killer. I'm like, that's not what I need to hear. I need to hear something else. So, but it probably helped me too when I was younger as I got older, because when we're in St. John's, we talk about, I had to figure it out on the fly. I'm fighting this guy. I've never seen him before. You better figure out if he's lefty, righty. Does he like to throw big bombs? Does he like to come down the pipe? Does he like to control you? Does he like to shake you? Does he like to? So in having to figure it out on your own, as I got further along in my career and I can actually do a little bit of research on people, I was like, I think I have this guy figured out. It didn't always work, believe me, but right. You remember too, though, we'd be wrestling with Where's He, DJ, all of us would be wrestling for a half hour after every single practice. The amount of techniques and little tricks you learn doing that it's like training anything else, right? So you pick up a lot of tricks along the way.
I YouTubed a couple of my next door neighbor and former teammate as well, Eric Goddard, former next door neighbor. Anyways, he won a cup with Pittsburgh while I was his next door neighbor, and so we had a little bit of a cup party. And Obviously, we all know how tough he was, and I was like, I wonder if they fought. And anyways, I did. I only saw one. I don't know if he fought more than one, but like
that was his first AHL fight when he was in Louisville.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So Kevin McClellan was our assistant coach. He's like, Doherty, know this guy from the Dub, tough guy, throws nothing but lefts. So I walk in and square off. The guy hit me with about 6 rights in the face. It's like, Mac, don't tell me anymore. Like I'd rather figure it out on my own. Yeah, he punched me in the God. Yeah, we fought probably 4, 5, 6 times. I'm not quite sure.
Oh, really? It's a lot.
Yeah,
because, the one I saw, like he didn't touch you. Like you got him in the arm, and like he couldn't get you. And I mean, you got him a couple times, but like it was kind of typical. What I remembered of like how you fought, right? Like you would try and neutralize guys, and then you would get in your shots, and you would do some damage for sure. But it was more about the technique, like you were saying. Like you didn't prefer to throw hay as I remember, right?
Yeah, only if I knew I was going to absolutely win 100%. Then I come in fire as hard as I could. But if I knew I was in one, it was all about. I wanted longevity. I didn't want to be that guy that's face was all beaten up. Like, I mean, it's not perfect, believe me. But I noticed, and just watching the players that were making a living out of it, was the guys that survived and really did a good job of just not getting beat up and then winning a few more than they lose. That usually had the longevity. So I was always thinking about that when I was going into it.
Kevin Sawyer was a past guest in this show too, and Soisy, and he was a complete student of it, like a complete student.
I think he beat the wheels off me in the minors, if I'm not mistaken.
Did he?
Yeah, I think he beat the wheels off me once. Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, I wouldn't know. But he would talk about that. And like Brian Maxwell was his coach and was a massive mentor for him, and talked to him all, tons of these nuances and like where to hold and how to do it. And yeah, he was, and like, again, like as most of you guys are, like one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet off the ice, like salt of the earth type guy. And I don't even know if he's ever been in a fight off the ice in his life, to be honest. But like, that's the way he got there. And it was very similar styles. One of your stories in the book that I have to bring up because we can make fun of him, because it reminded me of us sitting in the locker room making fun of him, which I completely forgot about, with that Smitty and his shot.
Do you remember this happening? I remember it.
Oh, no, I don't remember Bird Dog going in the pipes, but like it all flooded back. I'm like, yeah, he couldn't shoot. Like Smitty could not shoot at all. Tough as nails, like, and he was hard to play against, and he obviously had his good traits, but he could not shoot a puck, and that just made me laugh out loud when you said Bird Dog bet him 10.
I skated when he was the coach for the Generals. I skated with them during the lockout whenever I went back home. And he had like a rule that in practice the D weren't allowed to take slappers. And I was telling the kids, I was like, it's because he couldn't take a slap shot. He's telling you to lob him in there because he got 70 points a year lobbing him in there. And it works, don't get me wrong, but it was out of necessity for him. He was not on the corner doing one tees on the power play, that's for sure.
Oh man, that was such a great story. I want to talk about Michel Therrien, and I don't know how open you want to be with it. You mentioned in the book, first of all, I want to rewind just a little bit. So you talk about Mark Dial. So Diesel, that's crazy. Another past guest on this show, heck of a hockey player, 160-point guy or something in the WHL. Like when he put that mark up, 30, like nobody's beat that since he's done it, by the way.
Really? Still.
Yeah, that's like 20-some years old now. Like so super crazy. Was a good centerman. And I was in the game earlier where his skate took out that Letty's eye, right? From Lowell. Yep. So that was a home game. Super tragic. Guy was Diesel. I mean, he had nothing. He was going off the rush across the blue line. A guy back checking him, like kind of tripped him up. His skate comes up and catches this defenseman in the eye. Ends up losing his vision. I remember the team left that night and went on the road, and like we delivered some stuff. What's that?
I was a healthy scratch. I had to go in the locker room and hang out with them until the doctors got there.
Oh, really?
So when he got the skate, yeah, I was working out, and the Lowell trainers and Nick brought him in. They're like, we got to go get the doctors. Can you just hang out with them for a few minutes? I'm like, what am I going to say to this guy? He just got a skate in the eye. So I was just asking where he was from and stuff like that. But yeah, I remember this like it was yesterday.
Did you go to the hospital with me that night? Yeah. That was me and you then, hey?
Yeah.
Wow. I was like, I remembered going there, and I'm like, I was with somebody, but I didn't remember who it was because his team left. So that was you and I, hey?
Yeah, I think did we bring him like a Walkman or something?
Yeah, we bought him a stereo or something that he could listen to music on. Yeah, no, that was anyways. But
how weird is that? So like that Mark Skate does that. I end up getting traded at the deadline. And then in playoffs that year, which I wasn't there, Mark loses his own eye in kind of a freak scenario. So that's the setting.
Got caught. It was a freak accident. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's the setting of this story. And this is like the first Michel Therrien story that you talk about in the book. And you say you're not sure if it was true or not. And I wasn't there firsthand, but Terry Ryan was on that team. And Terry Ryan, like 100% says it's 100% true. Like that they were not allowed to go to this, to go to see Mark Dayal in the hospital. And there's many more stories that I've heard about this Therrien guy that just make him sound like he's not a real good human being. But anyways, there was that. You guys had your own little rift together, and like that went on for years. Like, you want to talk about that? Maybe just like in not anything new from the book that you didn't talk about.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it in the book, but like it started in junior. I mean, the Mem Cup, he was the coach of Granby. I'm just some lucky kid to be not playing a shift, skating around to lift the fog because there's no humidity. I guess whatever those machines are.
Dehumidifier.
Dehumidifier in Peterborough. Skating around, he's chirping me. Hey, first shift, Thornton. First shift. Hey, 3 shifts, Thornton. I'm like, why are you chirping me? What's wrong with you?
Right.
And then, we do the exhibition series against Fredericton. And every game I'm fighting somebody. And it seemed like every single game we played Freddie, there was either, they already had 3 or 4 guys with Terry Ryan, Fleming, who had ended up fighting, Moose, Sylvain Blouin. But then there's calling up guys from like the senior league. It felt like every game there was somebody new that I had to fight, and this guy was chirping me the whole time. And then it carried on to Wilkes-Barre. I mean, Trent Yanni confirmed. He's like, yes, every game somebody was coming after 30. Then it continued on into the NHL. I was like, I don't understand why he picked me. And I guess maybe because our careers, like kind of as a coach and a player, kind of mirrored each other. He was like a junior and then minors, and we were in the same division a lot. But I was like, and for me, like as a guy that did it, like I would never stand behind a bench. Like when I retired, I truly, like it's left me. Like I don't have that passion. When I was a player, it's like, how are coaches not getting upset or excited when goals are going in? Now I get it. Like when you retire, it's just like it kind of leaves your body, right? I couldn't stand back there and chirp guys. Like I wouldn't be able to do it. Maybe the other coach, if they were chirping my players, I'd have like that instinct to like stick up for my players, my teammates. But I was like, why? What's wrong with this guy? Why? I don't understand. So yeah, we had a rivalry through and through, and I talk about in the book. I honestly wasn't sure what I would do if I ever ran into him. And I ran into him in the hall, and he like came up and he didn't apologize, right? Like, but he said, "Really respect you." And I was like, well, I can't choke him out in the hallway now. I mean, he just said, it was a lot. I mean, there's stories on stories. The Terry Ryan one, obviously. Again, like I didn't want to speak without being in the room and confirming that it happened, because it'd be hearsay and not my place. But terrible story that unfortunately Diesel's caught in a hospital, just lost his eye. Like it's not anything you would wish on anybody, nor should you use that as try and use that as some sort of backwards competitive advantage. Didn't sit right with me. Right.
No, for sure. Did you ever hear the Terry Ryan story about his first meeting with Therrien? Did you ever hear that one?
He probably told me over a few beers when we were playing together, but I'm not sure if
he called him in, called him into his office, and Terry says, so he goes in there, he sits down in front of him, and Therrien lights a cigarette, right, and doesn't say anything. And I guess Terry sits there and looks at Terry, and Terry looks at him for like the whole cigarette. No one says a word. And Terry just says he's Harry eyeballing him, right? Like he's just looking at him. And then at the end of it, he says, get the F out of here. And like puts a cigarette out and he leaves. I guess he said it was the weirdest scenario ever. And he got in the restroom and the boys were like, he never said anything? He's like, no, he never said anything.
You heard him, lit a cigarette and kicked him out?
Yeah.
Wow.
Isn't that wild? Like, anyways, in this day and age with cancel culture, which I am not a fan of, but it's just like he just finally got fired. But like it just seems so like there's so many things that I heard about him, like how he kept having a job was like odd to me. But maybe he was really good at what he did too. I never played for him, so I have no idea. But
the results, you'd have to look at the results to see if they justify or warrant the rehiring.
Yeah. But coach, you talked about that bar scenario there, and I know you left. Do you want to leave? Like, is there a reason to leave the guy's name out of the conversation?
Yeah, I didn't want to bring anybody into it that it's not my place. I was there, but
yeah.
What a hockey player he was, though. We won't talk about him then, though. But that's an interesting story in and of itself. What happened with him and everything else around it.
Yeah, that guy was a talent. People ask me the best player I ever played with. They say he's the best one. I think, no offense, Podsy, but he was probably the best player I played with that never like truly established an NHL career. And he was fun to watch.
God, yeah, really, 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 really good player. Yeah, privilege to play with. And then. Well, anyways, yeah, we won't talk about using his name, but anyways, let's move on. I want to talk a bit about Pat Quinn saying you got to learn how to play. That being a little bit of a shock to you, and then you like what did that mean at the end of the day, and how did you learn how to play, or what aspects of the game did you start to try and like become better at?
Skating, stick, everything. I mean. I wasn't good enough to be in the NHL, right? Like 100% wasn't good enough. So you probably remember, like me and Rich Brown would be on the ice, and not just me. I mean, there's 5 or 6 of us probably that were out there for 2 hours. I remember one time I got off the ice early, and Brownie came in, and it's like, "You're that good? You don't need to practice anymore?" I was like, "Well, no, I've been here for 2 hours. I worked out. Like practice is over. I just wanted to get off the ice. Like more mental than anything." He's like, "Every single day you're on the ice for the full 2 hours. That's what you need to do if you want to make it one day." And he wasn't wrong. I had to go out there and stick handle through pucks, do pivoting drills, do all this stuff, extra conditioning because I wasn't playing a lot of minutes. And but Pat saying it, I mean, it's coming from Pat. One thing from your coach, right? But when Pat Quinn says you could be the toughest guy in the history of the world, but I still wouldn't have you on my team. And at that point, people are fighting their way into the NHL, right? At that juncture, I was like, I can fight my way into the NHL. And when he said, "No, you can't," I was like, wow, I must be really bad. I better work really hard to get a little bit better. And it wasn't a negative. I took it as a positive. I was like, listen, we're straight shooters. I'd rather hear it that way than some sort of backhanded compliment that doesn't mean anything and lulled me into a false sense of security down the minors.
Right. Yeah, no. And that was one thing too. Like that's something that I've learned. And that's one of the things when I'm working with players now, it's that idea that you can always get better. I mean, and you played with some players, I'm sure, that exemplify that at the highest level, right? And I got caught in that mode of like feeling that I was pretty good, and pretty good and pretty successful, and didn't really have that growth mindset of like, what can I get better at? Or what is my weakness that I need to work on? You sort of, like you said, there is a little bit of complacency there you can get lulled into without having that perspective or that kick in the pants to say, hey, no, there's more places for you to get to.
Yeah, I played. Char is one of the best at this. Bergeron, like you see Z out there, he's winning Norris trophies. He's probably the toughest guy in the league. He's scoring 20 goals in the power play, and he's out there working on pivoting, whatever it might be. Like he's always trying to improve in some aspect. If he's playing really well on the ice, he's in the gym working on something. Like he's always trying to figure out. He's learning a new language. He's always trying to improve himself as a human being, and I think that's. If you have that mindset and people notice it, it can become really infectious within your organization. And to be successful, it's the only mindset you should have, to be completely honest. Like no human's perfect. Bergie's as close as I've ever met to being the perfect human being, but no one's perfect. You can always improve on whatever it might be. I mean, I'm a big jiu-jitsu guy now. I love going to roll, and I get my ass beat handedly every single day from somebody that's better than me. Now, do I beat 3/4 of the people in the gym for roll? Probably, but I feel like it's the same in hockey. Like Sid's working on his game. The best players in the world are working on their game to get even better than they currently are. They don't get complacent, and you have to have that mindset to be successful.
Right. I love the example. Well, one, I mean, Connor McDavid recently this year, everyone's been talking about. He's been working on his one-timer. Like I think that's an amazing, just for like a young person to listen to that, right? That he's working on improving his shot, and he is the best player in the world right now. Like that's one thing. But I think we place players like Connor McDavid or Sidney Crosby, these guys that were first overall type players, on a little bit of a different pedestal because we know that their raw natural ability is also like beyond anything that most humans are capable of doing. Why I love the Chara story, and you talk about him, is because it seems like he worked his way into being the best defenseman in the world. Like I remember when he came up as a rookie, or even clips of him in the WH, like he was not good in a lot of aspects, right? Like, and sure, he had this big body, which he had to grow into and become, dexterous with and figure out where he was in space. But he was a workhorse on his game, and he became great because of it.
Yeah, I mean, he would be messing with his flex. The year he was winning the hardest shot, he was messing with his flexes to see if he could get an extra mile per hour out of it. Or, yeah, he's always constantly looking to improve. And he's an inspiration for. He should be an inspiration for a lot of young hockey players that come up. And the other thing I'll say too is, like, you got to make it fun, right? Like, it's not. It's really not that complicated. If you're having fun doing it, it doesn't feel like hard work, and you'll end up working harder while doing it. And Z made the game fun too. Bergie makes the game fun. Like, they're working as hard as anyone I've ever seen, but they're having fun while they're doing it.
You talked about being a part, and I don't really want to. Well, I'll fast forward, but we're going to go rewind a little bit too, because when you signed that deal with Boston, I think we got to talk about Anaheim previous, but I want to talk about that because we're talking about kind of these key pieces to the what was the Boston culture there, right? And you were a piece of that culture, like. And it sounds like a pretty big piece, but maybe didn't get as much like recognition, in the mainstream media or maybe from the casual fan, right? Of like really getting that culture change and getting that culture rolling. What was that like to be part of something as special as the Boston Bruins have been in the last, 10, 12 years?
It was really special. I mean, talked about it a bunch, and we can talk about Anaheim and Boston right now. Like, the Anaheim Cup was the most exciting moment of my life until my children were born. Like, there's nothing even close. Like, I career minor leaguer, never thought I'd make the NHL, end up getting a shot with Anaheim, play 50 something games, play 15 in the playoffs. I'm in game 5 when we won on the ice, like putting the cup over my head. My most exciting moment of my life, like 100%. Boston win a cup after my fourth year. That one meant more than anything else, because being a part of that core, being part of the locker room, playing meaningful minutes, being in Game 7, playing minutes in Game 7, like that cup means more to me than any other accomplishment in the game, even though they're 2 Stanley Cups, right? They mean 2 different things for me. So it meant a lot. I mean, we had a lot of leaders in that room, though. It helped that I had 10 years in the minors. I had a cup. When we set up leadership groups within the organization, like I was in Bergie's leader group, like he was the leader, but Bergie was the one saying, like, man, you're the only one here that has a trophy. You have more experience down there. You're a captain on 3 teams already in the minors. Like, you can speak up here. Like, we need to know what that's all about too. It's not just I'm a really good hockey player and I'm very mature and I work harder than everybody. Like, we need more than that to be successful. And then, there's Bergie, there's Z, we had Shane Knight. We had a bunch of guys that really held each other accountable and held the whole team accountable. And the culture there was, you embraced being held accountable. It wasn't a negative. Like, you'd almost be disappointed if your teammate didn't call you out for something. And I think the young guys really took to that. They really embraced it. I think Milan Lucic is I think he's been on the record talking about it now that he's gotten into overplaying over 1,000 games, how much it helped him be able to look in the mirror some days and be like, what, I could have brought more last night. And I'm glad somebody told me about it instead of just putting their head down, going to the shower, going to have a beer afterwards, and not addressing the fact. Like, if you want to be a really good organization, you have to be able to hold each other accountable. Being able to do that, though, you got to know you're a good teammate at the same time, and you have each other's backs.
One last break here just to remind you about the Peak Potential Hockey Project. This is my rolling 5-week, well, actually it's only a 4-week program. I shouldn't say only. It's 4 weeks and it's jam-packed with tons of material. But it's my 4-week high-performance mindset program for hockey players. We cover 4 critical elements from my time not only playing, but now helping teams and helping players. These are the 4 topics that I think move the needle the most in the mindset department for players who are trying to get better, who are trying to find their ways to greater heights, higher levels, college scholarships, junior teams, pro contracts, NHL jobs, you name it. These 4 skills that I teach in this program, I think, are the biggest needle movers. In week 1, we cover mental agility. In week 2, we cover 10x your development. Week 3 is becoming bulletproof, where I break down growth mindset for hockey players. And in week 4, it's called extreme ownership, where we break down the things you can control as a hockey player, and really the only things you should focus on as a hockey player to give you that extreme ownership and accountability to your goals and dreams. The course is designed to be consumed on a daily basis. So players go through it Monday to Friday. The content is called drip content. So when you wake up in the morning on Monday, there's 20 minutes of lessons, never more, quite often less. I made sure I designed it in packets that are consumable and digestible by today's players. So it's not long-winded, it's to the point, but it's packed full of information. So on Monday, you'll wake up and you'll have your 20 minutes of content. You cannot move forward. You can't go forward to Tuesday until it is Tuesday. So you wake up Tuesday and you take Tuesday's content. So each week has 5 days of content in there that can be taken at any point during the day by the athlete who is enrolled in the program. And then at the end of the week, we have a coaching call where everyone that's in the program gets on a call with me, and we review the week's content. We talk about it, we explore it, I answer any questions, we make sure that they are applying it or knowing how to apply the information. I make them accountable to the information, and then we move forward into week 2, and so on and so forth until we're finished the 4 weeks. This program has been received with high accolades. I'm so excited talking about it now because there hasn't been one disappointed player or parent out of the over 60 players now that have taken this program. I only released it this in 2021, in the summer of 2021. This is being recorded right now in January of 2022. So the program is only 6 months old. And yeah, we've already had that many players through it. It has been a massive success. I'm being thanked for creating the program again and again and again. So I'm really excited about offering it to all of you out there. It's available on my website. It's also available as a solo mission, so you can purchase the program and just take it on your own. You don't get me as a guide. You don't get the interaction with me, but you do get access to all the content and all the downloads and all the exercises. So if that's more your style and if you're more budget oriented, that is also an option. Both options are available on the www.upmyhockey website. And also this is available for teams. I have delivered this program to multiple teams now. The teams can get all their own enrollments, signups, and they can take it as a team. I can walk the teams through the coaching calls, or a coach can walk the teams through the coaching calls. So there is 2 options there as well for teams. But if you want to leg up a competitive edge on the competition, if you want to give your program a feature and a benefit that other programs aren't offering, if you're looking to be different and proactive and progressive, this is definitely something you should explore. Again, I wish I had it when I was playing, and maybe I would have had a little bit longer career. But anyways, that's it for the Peak Potential Hockey Project. 4 weeks. You can thank me after you take it. Trust that this is the program that you need. It's a great starting point to explore mindset in practical, applicable ways that you can implement immediately. Now back to the episode with Shawn Thornton.
Career minor leaguer up to the point. Well, I shouldn't say you had some games and it sounded like some extended time in Chicago, maybe not playing a lot of games. So you had the cup of coffee. Let's say you knew what that life was like, but I wouldn't imagine you felt established at that point, right? Like, yeah, right. So okay, so I didn't want to make any assumptions. Then you get that trade happens, then you play like essentially almost a full season in the NHL, and you win a cup. Amazing year, right? Obviously, like you said, mind-blowing type of a year. And then you're a free agent and people love winners, and you sign this 3-year deal with Boston. I'm sure you're over the moon. But I want to talk to the person, the human being behind Shawn Thornton. Was that all almost surreal? Were you trying to actually believe that you were going to be a full-time NHLer at that point, or had you embraced that already?
No, listen, having a cup helps. Playing on a really good team and getting some minutes on a really good team as well. I mean, in Anaheim, I started the season playing with Getzy and Pears because they were actually the 4th line at the time because Randy was the coach and the young guys were the 4th line. I was like, wow, am I lucky to play with these two? I think I had 5 or 6 points in 7 or 8 games with them. And then I ended up playing on the 3rd line with Penner and Marchand until playoffs. Then we reshuffled things. I was back on the 4th line with Mayday. But I think the fact that I was able to play on a pretty good line on a pretty good team, and then we won, I had a feeling I was going to be able to leverage that into a deal. I didn't know what the length of the deal was, and that was the most important thing for me. I just wanted some job security, even though your job's never secure, right? There's always somebody coming up trying to take it, and we have you can always be sent down. I didn't have any no move clauses. I definitely wasn't that good that I was getting any of those things. But I had a 3-year deal in place. It was a one-way deal for the first time in my career. And I felt like I was able to settle in and at least try and make something home. I remember I walked into Peter Shirley's office in Boston like a month after I signed. I went there to look for houses. He's like, "Hey, what are you doing in town?" I was like, "Oh God, yeah, I'm looking for houses. Is that okay?" I didn't even think to ask. I just assumed because I had a 3-year deal, I should. He's like, "Yes, you're fine," but like, so I was never really secure. Was it surreal? Yeah, it was. I mean, there was a lot of time that went into it, but I also felt like I was ready for the NHL when I was about 26, 27, 28. I felt like I saw guys that were going up, they were doing it. I played against them long enough in the minors. I felt like I was either a better, I won't say a better player, but I played the same meaningful minutes, if not more, and more important roles on other teams in the minors. And I was as tough, if not tougher than them. So I'm like, come on, when's my shot coming? So I was kind of waiting for it.
What a stamp of approval, though, right? For like whatever maybe uncertainty that was still there of like, you know, I think we all have an element of imposter syndrome at times with whatever it is that we're doing, you know? And, you know, for you to be in that locker room and, you know, Bergeron's like, "Hey man, like we want to hear you. Like, you know, like your voice matters." Like that's a pretty awesome endorsement, right? To allow yourself to be like, you know what, I am one of these guys and I do belong here and my voice matters.
Yeah, it really did. The year before too in Anaheim, I was lucky that I had Travis Moen there. So Mo was he was my roommate in Chicago when I was up. Like I was his mentor-ish in the minors. We lived. So when I got to Anaheim, he'd already been established in the NHL for a few years at that point, and got to the team. And I'm a 30-year-old rookie, so I just go to the front of the bus, the front of the plane, just put my head down. And he was actually the one who's like, "Thordy, like you can't be sitting in front of me. Like I don't care how many games I have. He's like, you've got 10 years down there. They mean just as much to us." And like he kind of helped the room understand like where I had come from and who I was. So that helped too in Anaheim. As much as I was a really small part of that team, it did help that I felt a little bit more comfortable having somebody that was younger than me vouching for, "No, this guy's he's a wily veteran, just doesn't have the games up here yet."
Right.
And then getting to Boston, you know, Bergie. I mean, Milan Lucic was an 18-year-old kid, and he's like, "This guy's 31 years old and he's just making the NHL now." It was like mind blowing to him what was going through his mind, but. I was just lucky. Really good team. I didn't know one person in that organization when I signed there. I didn't know much about the city. I'd only been there once before, but one of the best decisions I've ever made.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, in reading that book, like that was something where I related to, like the only commonality was that when I got traded to Toronto, I didn't know anybody. And not having played 10 years anywhere, you know, like being a rookie, right? And like a different coach and different players. And there wasn't one friendly face in the room. And by friendly, I don't mean they were all dicks to me. I just mean that I didn't know anybody. Right. And that's hard. Yeah. I mean, that's hard. And it's, I'm sure it's hard even at 30 years old, because there is and you know how I think we're both wired that same way. Like for me, my emphasis was like finding the respect of my guys in that room, however that was, whether that was going out for beers with them, whether that was hanging out, whatever that was. So like for me, like that was forefront. Like I needed to get these guys to know me, to like me. I wanted to feel, you know, a part of things. And anyways, like looking, I just remember that feeling being like really, that was really important. And at the time when I got traded, for me personally, it was like, not that the hockey took a back seat, because it didn't. Obviously we're there to play hockey, but I wish it was almost like I had a little bit more of that professional, like take care of yourself right now. Like don't worry about the room or who your friends are, you know, but like just take care of the game.
But it is important to get to know them, I will say. I mean, my first year in Boston, because I didn't know anybody, you know, I have a house now. And kudos to my wife on agreeing with me. My wife didn't come until after training camp was over. She treated it like I was still trying out for the team, so I could get to know my teammates, get engulfed in the culture, and really. And then she came in probably 2 weeks into the season, I would say. So that really helped me acclimate into the Bruins, because you're able to, you know how it is. I mean, you're married, you usually going home afterwards. You pick your spots here and there, but I literally got to go with dinner, lunch. I didn't have to worry about being on a schedule other than being on my teammates' schedule and getting to know all the guys. So it was a big help there.
How much does like, let's say Anaheim had a good team there. Like you played that year, and like that was your first, you know, season of being an NHLer, let's call it, right? Like you played the 46 games, you were in the lineup more than you were out, you were playing minutes. But then you win the cup. Let's pretend to somehow that team has a first round exit. Like how much do you think that winning Because people talk about it all the time, right? And I think nowadays even maybe more so, like you're worried about stats and you're worried about this and you're worried about that. But like being a part of something that wins is sometimes has way greater consequences than anyone could imagine.
So I say it all the time. I kind of say it in jest, but stats are for losers. I mean, the only thing that matters is winning, really. For me, if say hypothetically we had a first round exit, from talking to my agent throughout the season, I think I would have been able to leverage into a one-way deal somewhere. I'm not sure I would have got 3 years anywhere, though. I think it would have been another, all right, well, let's see if he really has it. But that cup really helped me, I think, secure a 3-year deal. And the best teams I played on, I mean, Chris Kelly was one. We had a room full of these guys, but Chris Kelly said it best when he came into our locker room at the trade deadline that year. He's like, this is a team that's happier for the guy next to you to score 30 goals than for you to score 30 yourself. And having that mindset inside the locker room and the only thing anyone really cares about is winning. Nobody's looking at the stat sheet afterwards to see if they got ripped off on an apple and somebody else had it and they're going to the PR guy to argue for their assist back. Like I can't remember any of that happening on our Stanley Cup team. I really don't. It was just, did we win? Did we win the right way? Do we have to improve on something? And did everyone here do the job to their best of the ability? And great, you got a few points, happy for you. Like, let's, think about it till tomorrow and then get back to work. That was it. Nobody cared about their plus minus. Nobody cared about their time on ice. They just wanted to contribute to winning a game. That was all that mattered.
Can you teach that?
I think your leadership group, well, it's probably in that organization, it probably starts from the top, right? With at the time, Cam, Peter, Claude, and then obviously that's how Z is wired. That's how Bergie's wired. That's myself, Kells when he got there, Andy Ferentz. I mean, we had guys that were just wired that way, and I think they did a good job of finding culture guys that were wired that way. And then when your core is wired that way, everyone else buys in, or they're gone. There's no in between on it, right? Like the Patriots used to talk about that, right? The Patriot way. Or it's kind of like Tom Brady's way. Like you buy in, or he's going to find somebody that will buy in. So I think it's really important for that culture. I haven't been in a locker room in 5 years. I'm not sure what they're like anymore, to be completely honest. But that was a big reason we were very successful.
Yeah, and it's such a common theme, and they always say success leaves clues, right? And it's you look for those clues, and not only does it like clues to being successful, but like the backhand side of that is like you look at guys that win Calder Cups, right? I'm talking AHL, it's the AHL championship, coaches included, right? You look at guys that win Stanley Cups, like those guys go on to have longer careers, longer contracts, make more money. One, because it's hard to win and you don't know what it's like until you do it. And people want winners, but like it helps you individually. And that's like the part that I think the young athlete has a really hard time figuring out, because you want to score the goals or you want to have, the accolades, because that's what you think people are looking at. Yet if you can find a way to make everyone else around you more successful and your team more successful, that is going to help you out as well. It's a hard one. It's a hard one to teach, but I 100% agree with you. When the core, if that's the way everyone is, you got to get in, or you got to get out, right?
Agreed. I'm not a scout, but like when I'm on the outside looking in, and you talk about the best players in the game, I look at it as who are the guys that make the guys that are with them better, right? Like, listen, Bergie's playing with Pasta and Marshy, and they're two world-class athletes, but I've seen him play with a lot of players over the day, and every person that plays with them becomes a better player with him. Barkov on our team, same thing. Sid, maybe arguably the best in the game at that. Doesn't matter who you put on his flanks, it seems like he's making them an all-star. So that's, I think, more important for me if I was a scout, judging top-level talent than who's putting up the most points. Like, that'll probably happen if you're that type of guy, but when you can make the players around you that much better, like that shows true intelligence, I think.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. So you played in Anaheim there and won a cup. Boston had that culture for a long time. Like maybe you never. I mean, I don't know what it was like when you got to Florida. I guess they were kind of in the middle of not where they wanted to be, and now obviously you guys are looking real strong. But was there did you feel that difference? Because I've talked to other guys at the NHL level who, you can go from one place where you feel one thing. Brad Larson comes to mind actually right now, when he went from the Colorado Avalanche and Joe Sakic and Forsberg and these guys, and you talk about accountability, like he speaks to it beautifully. And then he ends up in Atlanta, And he's like, I might have been, I felt like I was in a different universe.
Right.
You know, like it wasn't even the same league, right? How people were handling stuff and guys breaking their sticks because they didn't get the apple you're talking about. And, no one gave a shit about winning. It was all about personal success or failure. And did you have a chance to feel that as a player at the NHL level, the difference?
No, I will say when they brought me to Florida, they brought in myself, Willie Mitchell, Derek McKenzie, UC Okinen, Lou came here the year before, and Dale brought us in for that very reason. We had won or been successful in other organizations, really good organizations, and he wanted to bring that culture to a young team that didn't have that yet. And it's not because the players that were here weren't those players. It's just like they were really young, so they hadn't invested in. Dale didn't feel at the time the young core needed that investment made until they brought us in, and we tried to instill the things that we had learned over the past 15, 16, 17 years. We definitely, all of us, myself, Mitchie, Mac, UC, we're all about team good is better for everybody than individual good. And but we're also lucky, like Ekblad, Barkey, Hubie, not selfish individuals to begin with. So really just emphasizing that guys keep doing the right things for the right reasons, and it will work out at some point if you surround yourself with the right pieces and create that culture. So no, I don't think I ever experienced it my whole career, actually. Even in the minors, I was never on a team that didn't have a good bunch of guys that were looking out for each other more than themselves.
No, that's good.
There, but they were gone pretty quick.
Right. Do you feel? I know you're obviously in a different role. You're still involved with the Panthers, but do you feel like because those guys were young and now they're the leaders on your team right now, which is being successful? Do you feel like you have your fingerprints on kind of the culture there a little bit? Like, do you feel there's a little bit of what you guys started there left?
I don't know. I literally I'm so far removed now from the hockey side that I'll text Eck every once in a while, but and Barkey if they say congrats on some things, but I don't really have a feel for the locker room anymore down there. And I think they brought in some really good pieces too. Bill Zito's done an amazing job with like Patrick Hornquist, Gudis, so like some really good character guys, and
Sam Bennett plays hard for you guys too.
Yeah, that have helped. So I don't know. You'd have to ask them if I had any sort of influence on them whatsoever. They might have said no. I ignored everything he said. I'm not sure. It might have been the right thing to do too.
I just started reading the chapter about Tuukka. I have a son who's a goalie. My middle son's a goalie, and he's 11 years old. Good at the position. He's super fiery and super competitive. Like,
it's great
to a fault right now. But and that's the thing. I think competitiveness. I mean, you can't really have too much of it. You just have to learn how to deal with it and how to work it. And that's one thing I'm trying to help him with. Can you maybe speak to that? Because you saw Tuukka, which I didn't. I mean, I know him as just being a world-class goalie, and I didn't know what he was like in Providence, or I haven't seen the videos that you were talking about. Like, what was he, and what did that look like, and how did him learning to deal with maybe that competitive fire, his emotions, like help him become a better goalie?
Yeah, I think he. Again, I hate to talk for other people, but I think he learned how to channel it properly. He is arguably, and I'm biased because he's a friend, but arguably the best goalie of the last 14, 15 years, right? You'd be hard pressed to find somebody that's had such a consistent Carey Price, and you have to find another guy maybe, but he works hard at it, but he's also a naturally gifted goalie, right? Like, I mean, I remember skating with him, the lockout guys from other teams, like, you have to shoot on this guy every day. Like, how do you have any confidence whatsoever, anybody on your team? Like, he doesn't even break a sweat, and nobody can get one by him. But he does work. He thinks the game really well. He puts a lot of thought into, a lot of effort. He was fiery when he was young, but again, probably similar to me and my antics after fights. Like, I had to learn. I was very competitive. If I won, I was very happy. If I lost a fight, I was very upset. And you definitely knew where I stood in both situations. And then with some mentoring from other people, I learned how to channel it the right way, or at least mask what it looks like until you're in a position or a spot where nobody can see you, and you can probably break a stick in the back room instead of doing it in front of 20,000 people. Right. So he now actually, it's funny because people perceive him as this very laid back, la-di-da, like, I'm going to stop the puck. If I win, I win. But he is as competitive as any athlete I've ever met. He just doesn't show it. He'd be a good card player now. He'd be a good poker player now.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I just love that because that's one of the things that I work with athletes on is like really how to use it. You know what I mean? And sometimes you get it from experience. Some guys never get it, right?
Yeah.
Some guys are constantly trying to find it. So that was more like kind of, and I guess you don't necessarily know where he found that. Sometimes it is perspective and it is age, but yeah, there is, especially in that position, like that goalie position where you need to feel confident, like how you said, like in the room, right? Like you didn't want somebody sitting next to you thinking that you were shy about doing what you were going to do, or you were uncomfortable. Like you don't want to look back at the guy between the pipes and go, "Oh my God, I don't know what's going to happen next," right? Like you have to have some type of comfort with that.
Yeah, and those guys too. I mean, they're like pitchers, right? The game hinges on their performance. Really, goalie is the most important position in the game, in my opinion. I mean, you mess up up front, you have 3-4 people behind you that are going to bail you out, hopefully, before it even. When it's just you, the goalie, you're the last line of defense, so you're exposed a little bit more than most, and it's usually due to the mistakes that we made in front of you. But I think good goalies are confident. They make it look, I won't say easy, but they have a calming influence for the team. I know he definitely had that for us. Like. And Lou was the same thing here, and Jiggy was in Anaheim. Like when he was in the pipes, like, all right, boys, we know what we're getting night in and night out, right? Like it's consistent, confident. You know what you're getting, and it
in
kind
control.
of helps the team play a little bit better in front of them.
Yeah. Did yeah, I mean, I think about, like I said, like they're in control. You just have that feeling that like they got things taken care of, whether there's a good goal or a bad goal. And yeah, they might be burning inside, but like there's just a little bit of a swagger there where you're like, oh, they got this. You know?
Yeah, I got the next one.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about the down up 3-0. You called it the collapse. And then you guys come back and you're down 3-2 in the final and are able to come back and win Game 7 in Vancouver. If there isn't lessons learned from the first one, you probably don't win the second one, I assume. What went wrong in the first one, and how did that going wrong help you in the final of the next year?
Yeah, so we were playing Philly in the second round. We were up 3-0 in the series. Kretsch got hurt. That didn't help. He was leading the team in playoff scoring at the time. He's a remarkable playoff performer. He's a remarkable career, period, but really stepped up in the playoffs. So end up, losing 3 in a row. We go to back to Boston. We're up 3-0 in the first period. And again, I'm not saying I saw things through a different lens or I'm better than it, but I remember when we scored 3-0, the celebration on the bench was of almost, hey, all right, boys, we got this. It's 3-0. And I remember saying to myself, like, we don't have this. Like, there's a long game left, and we lost. We literally collapsed. The Flyers did an unbelievable job of continuing to put pressure on. They never gave up. They came back and ended up beating us in Game 7. It was one of the more crushing defeats that I've ever had as a professional athlete. But you fast forward to the next year, we had heard about it all summer, right? You couldn't get away from it. Even if you lived in Canada, like, it's the greatest collapse in the history of the NHL playoffs. The only third team to do it. I can't remember when the team before us was. Didn't matter. But we used that as fire to go into the next one. And we had 3 Game 7s, I think, in that playoff run to win the cup. And it really taught us, like, you play until the final whistle. And again, if you're down by a couple goals, that confidence that you're talking about, like, that's all right, boys. We're down 2. That's fine. We got 50 minutes left. It's lots of time. Like, let's just figure out a way to make it happen. So that lesson was huge for our team going into the next season. And I don't think, I shouldn't say I don't think we win 2011 without it, but it definitely helped win in 2011 going through 2010. Right.
Yeah, that's I mean, don't care where you're playing. I mean, playoff series, like, there's momentum is something for sure. It doesn't mean everything, but it is something. And going back in there to Game 7, I can imagine you guys, and I mean, like, the first time, probably felt, I mean, you didn't want it to be in Game 7 in the first place. So no one probably felt good about it going in, but there was probably a relief. Like, I can almost feel that myself, although I was nowhere near that bench. But, like, you've now lost 3 in a row. It's the first period. You're up 3-0, and it kind of feels like, yes, like, finally, like, we're going to get this thing done,
Yeah.
And then that little probably minute or two of comfortability, and it all goes sideways. The resiliency, I don't know the playoff run up to Vancouver. And I'm from BC, so I remember your series quite well, just from a spectator standpoint. What happened in those previous ones? Did you guys have to come back to get to those game sevens again? Had you built up some resiliency there?
Yeah, Montreal, we were down. I think we had home ice advantage. We did have home ice advantage. We were down 0-2 going into Montreal. We always had a tough time playing in Montreal. And we went 2 games in Montreal. We ended up going to game 7. I think double overtime, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember if it was game 7 or game 5. It was double overtime. But Nathan Horton scored the game-winning goal. The next series we swept Philly. The series after that, we played Tampa. I was only in the first 2 games, and then I was a healthy spectator for the rest of them. But we went to game 7 against game 7 against Tampa at home, and then another game 7 against Vancouver. So it was a long playoff series. Other than the Philly series, I think we grinded it out, and we didn't know where we were going to end up. We were playing really good teams and buildings we didn't have a lot of success in the past. So we mentally got through it, though.
I know you're beloved in Boston, and it talks about that in the book, that you're kind of made to be a Bruin in a lot of ways, and you spent the majority of your career there. Is that do you still have a house there? Do you go back there? Is that home, or like where does Boston sit for you now in this stage in your career?
Next Thursday, actually. I have my foundation's based out of there. I still have a house there, but I rent it out. I found some renters that have been great. They take care of it. Now with my family that I've grown since I came to Florida, it's probably too small. It doesn't fit us anyways, but I get back probably in between 6 and 10 times a year for various charity events, or if I'm lucky enough, people still pay me a little bit of money for me to sign autographs and entertain. Our parent company, I shouldn't say parent company, but the owners of the Florida Panthers, they own a business called Virtue Financial. So they have an office in Boston. So actually in 2 weeks, I'm going back to host some clients at a Bruins game with Virtue CEO, who's our minority owner, Doug Sifu. It feels like home when I go back. The family, we usually vacation there for a week or 2 in the summer, but I'm here in the office for 340 days a year. I'm here in the office, so I don't get back as much as I'd like, but I try and get back whenever I can.
Sure, yeah, that's a tough spot to leave, I'm sure, with all the success there, and it must be a feel-good place. I'll close with one question, and actually, we can maybe even, who knows how long we'll talk about this for, but I got a parent group on Facebook, parents from all over North America, that we talk hockey, and I try and help guide the ship a little bit, and keep their perspective on the rails. Having young kids, as you know now, and being a parent and wanting the best for them, sometimes you can be, your heart's in the right place, maybe you're not doing quite the right thing. So anyways, the group's super cool, and if I'm interviewing somebody like you, I'll ask if there's any questions. And there was one question today from Tim Raymond, who says, I have a question. How a labeled enforcer from his era in the league with his style that was beneficial looks at the current gameplay and sees certain game situations where an enforcer type player is needed? Like, how do you view the state of the game now through your lens and your place in it?
I think the game's in a better spot. I really do. I think the NHL's done an amazing job. I think the product is as exciting as it's ever been. Again, we've talked about it at length. Like, it got me in the door, right? Like, me having to do what I had to do. But I think the game's in a better spot, that the so-called staged fighting, the 2 guys that just went out and punched each other in the face at the start of every game, and then again didn't get another shift. Like, I never really loved that. Again, I did it for a while. You saw me do it in St. John's. I had to do it some nights, but like, I never liked the fact that I was just going out there to fight some 6'4" or 6'5" monster just to prove who was tougher to get the game started. Now, for me, was it necessary sometimes? I remember games that we had lost 3 in a row, and I go out there and fight bolts and it fired the team up. So, but again, he was playing minutes. So anyways, long story short, I like that there's no more one-dimensional fighters in the game. I really do. I think there'll always be a place for fighting in the game, though. The intimidation is a part of life. That game is 200 by 85 with no out of bounds, guys skating 30 miles an hour, the toughest of the tough individuals mentally and physically, and it becomes a pressure cooker in there some nights. And believe it or not, 2 guys that know what they're doing, getting them off and getting rid of that tension is a positive outlook or outcome for the game in some situations. And I don't think that'll ever go away. I mean, kind of take it back to the schoolyard when you had a beef with somebody. Sometimes it's just good to go punch each other in the face, and then you're probably best friends for the rest of your life after that. It's kind of on a much grander scale, that type of mentality. So I think fighting will always be a part of the game. I just don't I am a fan of the fact that the one-dimensional type guys are not part of it anymore.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that aspect for sure. I've talked about it a bit on this platform, just how much more rare it is to find someone like you. And I think you're actually a good example when I was thinking of that, like, like a Tom Wilson, I don't know if you'd put in the same class as Tom Wilson, maybe plays more minutes and he has a few more goals and that type of thing, but you could play. And I guess like, that's the thing with me is like guys that can play. Luch is kind of filling that role now at the end of his career, but like who have that edge, who can still intimidate, right? Can drop the gloves if need be. Teams that have players like that are better teams, I think. And I just think that those guys are so hard to find now because junior isn't like it was when we were there, and the way they're brought up in minor hockey isn't the same way. And that's one thing that I kind of beat my drum for. I'm like, oh my gosh, find some sandpaper. If it's anywhere inside of you at all and you want to be a hockey player, find some sandpaper because everybody still wants it and can use it.
I think it goes back to making yourself better all around, right? So everyone has weaknesses. Everyone has deficiencies. Mine was skating, probably stick handling, what I was going for. Fighting was the easy part for me. But if I flip it around and I look at guys like Jerome McGinley, like even they know how to take care of themselves. Like you're not learning how to take care of yourself and finding that grit and edge is not detrimental in any way, shape, or form. If you have it in you, you should be training to learn how to take care of yourself. It's only adding to your, full portfolio, if you will. And I completely agree with that. I mean, if I could have just made it on fighting, maybe I would have, but I had to become a better hockey player. I think if you could just make it on hockey skill alone, why wouldn't you make yourself one of the tougher guys that's one of the best hockey players and be able to bring that to the table as well?
No, I agree. And I think that, for me, I do agree with you. I think it's like where the game's at, it's better for the growth of the game. I still have a hard time watching some regular season games. Like it's just, there are no hitters out there. That's just sort of me and where we came from. Like I like the game a little more edge, but I love the game now in the playoffs. Like I still think like playoff hockey now is awesome because it's still fast. It's still super skilled, but you still got to be tough. You got to be tough to win still. I'm
with you because I'm old school as well and from our generation, but I see all the guys like training together in Toronto or wherever they might be. And, they all seem to be friends, even though they're not teammates. Like that part for me is hard to understand because I wouldn't even go to meetings sometimes if I thought somebody thought they were going to be friends with me because it took away from me being able to do my job and intimidate them. So I do think that's changed a little bit. And I remember, like I said, I skated with Smitty, this junior team. I had a hard time. I found like 2 or 3 guys. Everyone else looked the same to me. I'm not a scout, by the way, but like almost every kid looks like they want to be Connor McDavid, which is who I want to be too. Like, don't get me wrong. I would have loved to have been. But to your point, like you don't see you used to be able to see like the style of play almost fit a guy's character when we grew up. It seems like almost everyone's molded the same. And I have a tough time finding, I don't know. I watch a game and like, everyone's trying to carry it across the blue line. Like I never would have thought to carry it across the blue line. Like I was getting it every single time, right? Like I know puck possessions become very important, but it looks like a different game now than it did when we played.
Yeah, and there still is room for that, and I guess that's the thing. I hope it doesn't go away. I think the game is trying to make it become not. I mean, like the rules in junior and the BCJHL and some of these places, like where you're getting kicked out for a fight. Like I don't know what the next 20 years looks like, but I do think that the game is better. I mean, maybe that's the old school part of me that thinks that, but I hope they keep it in. And I do see that pendulum swinging a little bit back, like where we are trying to identify some grit and some toughness. And again, not in the old school way of like just somebody who fights, but somebody who will finish checks, somebody who will go to the dirty areas and make it tough on the competition. Those guys are definitely in vogue, which makes me feel good. Cause that was something that I was proud of, even as a goal scorer. Like, like you said, when we played, like I remember you and Smitty actually always wanted me to fight more because you guys thought I was pretty good at it. And I did it enough, I thought, but like you still have to be tough to score goals then. Right. You know what I mean? Like in your own way, like you had to go to areas where you were going to get hurt, and not everybody wanted to do that. So that's one thing I've said in this platform before is like, that was one of the things that I was proud of, like being able to say that I was a hockey player was that I was able to do things that were hard to do. Like how you said, in my own way, because it wasn't easy. And And that's kind of the one thing that I take when I look at the game in some areas today. I'm like, it's not that hard to do that anymore.
They got rid of a few of the rules that instilled a few of the rules that used to make it miserable to stand in front of the net. You can't just break your stick on somebody's back anymore. No, that's not allowed, which is probably for the better. But
it is. No, it is. But yeah, I mean, it's a great game, and I know that you're still involved in it. And I mean, it's going to be a piece of my life forever. And maybe I'll be a good way to close. We talked about everything you did on the ice. I know you're still involved with the Panthers now. Maybe give us a little bit of you got a pretty fancy title there in your email thread. What it is are you doing now, and how are you helping the Panthers be a better team?
Very fancy title, yeah. So I oversee marketing partnerships, content, community foundation, game presentation, and biz development for the Panthers here. So currently, right now, like my biggest priority is getting back into the community and creating revenue for the foundation, seeing as COVID really put a damper on any of those events. And obviously with player protocols, can't use the players for a lot of these things. And then we're searching for a new naming rights partner for our arena. So those are my two biggest focal points right now, and continuing to create engaging content for our brand and being able to, try and grow our brand. So that's sort of my day to day. I love it. The business of sports was always a passion of mine. I was very lucky that when the Violas and the Seafoods bought this organization, they picked my brain on a lot of things I had seen throughout my career. And I was also lucky that the Bruins allowed me to sit in the office after practice and really just drink it in on what the day-to-day looks like. And I was a little bit more knowledgeable than most players. And yeah, so when I was retiring, they offered me the job to come on this side of the table and really, try and learn as much as possible. So Gary gave me advice when I stepped in this. He said, it's just like hockey. You get out of it what you put into it. So the harder you work, the more successful you'll be. And we're kind of cut from the same cloth there, Pods. Like we're not going to get outworked. So I come in every day and just try and work my hardest and do what's best for the organization.
That's awesome. I was wondering how the evolution of that, like sort of your genesis story. So like it was them approaching you, or was there a mutual understanding that you wanted to be involved in some capacity?
Yes and no. So I became really tight with our now CEO, Matt Caldwell, while I was playing here. And like I said, when I was with the Bruins, like I had created my own sort of brand. I became really tight with the CMO for the Bruins, the partnerships, Chris Johnson, their president, Amy Latimer. And I used to sit in the office all the time and just really pick their brains on the business of things. And I actually had a job offer my second year in Florida, which ended up being my second to last year, to go back to Boston, do community relations with the Bruins. I was going to be on TV with Nesson doing like an armchair quarterback type show pre-game. I was going to be the conduit between some of the sports teams that I had relationships with, like some players on the Pats, the Red Sox, and they're going to create some content around that. And Doug Seafood and Matt Caldwell came to me and said, you know what, like in talking to you, and it was little things like, what do you think about parking? What do you think about partnerships? What do you think about using players in XYZ? And I told them how we were successful in other organizations and what wasn't successful. And they said, we think you're a little smarter than you let on. We'd love for you to join the business side. And I said, yeah, I'd love to. So I had about a month that I stewed on it. My wife helped in this decision too. She said, like, you going up to Boston and just critiquing people and not really and being like an unbiased reporter, like I just don't. You need a vested interest in an organization for you to be happy, and that helped my decision too. But the business of sports is always a passion of mine. I was just lucky. I didn't think anyone ever trust me to be in this role.
Oh, that's amazing. That's cool. I think there's something to be said for that. And that's something that I do, that I have chatted about before, and something that I think I missed the boat on. Like, again, we talked about the relationship, the player relationships. Like that was something that I spent a lot of time and invested a lot of time in. But I didn't cross the line and like get to know my coaches. I didn't get to know the assistant coaches. I didn't get to know the GM, or like I was never in a place. Maybe I wasn't in a place long enough either, but I always sort of felt, I don't know, like that bridge wasn't there, you know what I mean? And the relationships in hockey are the most important ones in any capacity. Like, even the fact that we can get on this call, right? That I can give you an email and, we played together for 2 years and we respect each other, and you'll donate your time to me. That's something that says something about you. It also says something about me, right? Because we were able to invest enough in each other that we respect each other enough. You to do that as a player was smart. But I bet you it wasn't calculated in the sense of like, oh, I want to work my way in here. Like you probably came at it from just the idea of curiosity, right? Like you were interested.
100%. I felt fortunate that they allowed me inside that world as a player. I mean, there's was definitely advantageous for them too. I mean, when Chris Johnson, the VP of partnerships, has a dinner with AT&T and he knows I'm interested in this and can bring me along, like that definitely helps him being able to have the access to that player. But for me, I was like, oh, I'm getting to see what the inner workings of a marketing partnership deal might look like. Like that's huge for me. And for me, like I was always wondering when the day was going to end, right? Like my career went till I was 40. I'm so fortunate. Like, but every single day I'm like, when's the shoe going to drop? And what am I going to do after the shoe drops? So I was always trying to think like, you got to start setting yourself up for whatever might be next. And if you don't have any lines in the water, you're not going to catch anything. So I was just trying to set myself up for whatever was next, because I didn't make enough just to shut it down. I knew that, and I wasn't going back to the factory. So it's always trying to figure out what was next.
That's awesome. And what is the title? I can't remember. It's not in front of me. Is it
Chief Commercial Officer. I'm a C-level executive.
Nice, man. So from the steel mill to C-level of the Florida Panthers, and a 20-year professional hockey career, essentially, right? I mean, that's 20 years. Played till you're 39. I checked your birth date. I'm like, did he actually play an NHL game at 40? And you just had the season finished prior to you turning 40. That's amazing, though, bro. Like, wow, every 10 years straight in the NHL, essentially. 11. Was it 11 years? Yeah, after you got out of the minors. I love that so much. Everything about it is amazing. We'll cut your time off. I know I know you've donated here an hour and 20, so we'll cut her short. But I know everyone got a ton from this. Appreciate the book. Yeah, I got it here beside me. I'm not quite through with it. I'll throw it up on the camera. I love that title, man. You're looking like a superhero there almost.
Really good lighting from a few years ago, yeah.
So go out there and get it, support it. It's a great story, and it's one of those stories too that it's just like inspiring, because like that stick-to-itiveness, the perseverance, the resilience, the evolution of getting better and finding a way, is like, there's so many amazing things. I can understand why they wanted you to write about it, because it's a bit of a rarity. It does happen, but it's a bit of a rarity. So good on you. Really proud of everything you did there, buddy. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right, so we'll cut her off. That was another great episode with Shawn Thornton. Until next time, play hard, keep your head up. Cheers. Alrighty, thank you so much for being here today and listening to the end, faithful listener. Thordy's a great dude, and I call him a dude because he is a dude. He's just a good human. He's a guy that you definitely would want to sit and have a beer with around a campfire. He's somebody that you would enjoy having over for a dinner party. He also knows how to get it done on the ice. He knows how to win championships, and he knows how to sell marketing, as he's doing right now with Florida. Very resourceful guy, very intelligent guy, and as you heard from the interview itself, like, his story is so great. He did fight his way into the NHL, but he sure didn't fight his way through the NHL. He ended up solidifying himself as a very, very valuable player on an amazing team in a very deep locker room, and he was looked upon for his leadership and for the way he kept people accountable. He never lost track of his roots. They're still with him today, from his father and from the steel plant and his upbringing. And I just love that about him. And I love that about most hockey players in general, too. I do love that about the culture, that generally not too much changes these guys. And I love that I'm able to pick up the phone after 20 years of playing together and have a conversation like it was yesterday that we were just out there at practice. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I enjoyed having it. If you want to support Shawn, his book is a great place to start. It is a good story. It's a great gift for the aspiring hockey player, and you do hear some pretty cool inside scoops in there, some of which were discussed on this podcast. But tons of fun. Talk about resilience. It's totally resilient, totally persistent, totally patient, willing to evolve. All these things that I love, these traits that I love, that will do you well in whatever it is you want to do in life. All those lessons are in this episode. So Until next time, once again, I appreciate you listening. Keep those reviews coming in. Keep those downloads happening. Keep sharing the podcast with others. Let's keep building this and getting this into new ears. Remember, upmyhockey.com and the parent group. If you want to be one of the people that can ask questions to my guests, get in the parent group, and you can get your question asked on the air. And until next time, play hard and keep your head up.